Telecasting.
Hmm.
We're talking about excerpts from Media Manipulation and Perceptual Control, and its premise is brutally simple. It says that video content isn't just something you passively consume, it's actively working on us.
Great.
The author even describes videos as real thieves on how you think.
That's a profoundly high stakes claim, and it immediately sets the tone for this deep dive.
It does.
Our mission is to analyze the source's assertion that manipulation through video is not accidental, but, a calculated, highly sophisticated exercise of power over your perceptions.
It's this idea that we're not just watching images, we're being subjected to a mechanism of control.
Yes.
And the mechanism they describe is fascinatingly specific. The assertion is that telecasting gadgets, TVs, news feeds, whatever the medium, are subtly programmed, not just to inform you, but explicitly to teach and even stupefy the unarmed, unaware viewer.
Wow, stupefy is a strong word.
It is. The source even claims this control is exercised over you through your perceptions to the point of literally forcing you to blink or shift focus in a controlled way.
And that control over a basic physiological response, that's a crucial detail.
How so?
Well, it suggests the manipulation operates at a level far below conscious awareness. If the video is controlling when and how you process visual information, it means the critical, rational gatekeeper in your mind is just being bypassed.
So we're talking about intentional design.
Intentional design aimed at neutralizing rational resistance.
Which brings us directly to the psychological target that the analysis identifies.
Exactly. The source suggests a specific psychological hook, drawn from what seems to be an observance of transactional analysis, or TA. It says videos may carry hidden messages to your child ego state.
Okay, so for listeners who might not be familiar with transactional analysis, can you quickly outline what the implications of targeting the child ego state are? In this context, I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in TA, we generally talk about three ego states: the parent, the adult, and the child. The adult state is, rational, objective. It processes information based on facts. It's your critical thinker.
Right.
The child ego state, however, is driven by emotion, intuition, curiosity, but also, this is the key part, by high levels of trust and susceptibility to influence.
So if a telecast is speaking directly to that child state, it's appealing to the part of us that is least likely to analyze the content critically.
Precisely. If the message hits the emotional, trusting part of your mind first, the adult state, the part that asks, is this framing objective? Is this evidence sound? It just gets sidelined.
And the consequence, according to this analysis, is pretty bad.
It's detrimental. The video is said to speak to that child ego state, ultimately dwarfing its creativity. It's basically an intellectual or creative sabotage.
That concept of dwarfing creativity, that sounds like a core harm. It implies the programming doesn't just bias you, it actively diminishes your capacity for independent thought.
Oh, it goes deeper than simple distraction. The source claims this manipulation is designed to undermine your inner guidance system. It warns that video can hypnotize you to undermine your uplifting MGR.
Let's pause on that phrase, MGR. It stands out. It feels like specific jargon from the source. What exactly is an MGR, and why is undermining it so central to the manipulation?
So the author uses MGR to mean your own internal, moral, or cognitive master guide or reference. Think of it as your inner compass.
Okay.
It's that set of values and critical processes you use to navigate the world and evaluate information on your own. The source claims the telecast seeks to weaken this internal MGR, to ill-tutor you.
Ill-tutor you.
Meaning teach you manipulative or incorrect habits, essentially replacing your independent judgment with the program's guidance.
So it's a substitution strategy. The manipulation is simultaneously enslaving you while often uplifting the image of MGR, but for an external controlled purpose.
Exactly. Using the idea of a guide to enforce obedience to the message, the programmer is replacing your guide with their guide.
And the analysis emphasizes this whole structure controls the unsuspecting, trusting viewer of TV or news program.
The viewer's vulnerability is their assumed passivity and trust in the medium itself. If you assume good faith, you drop your defenses, and the child ego state is completely exposed.
That makes the stakes extremely clear. If we accept this premise, we're not just passively watching, we're engaging in a perceptual battleground.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings us to section 2, where it gets really interesting. The mechanics of the attack.
Right.
We need to dissect the specific visual mechanisms camera operators and directors use to achieve this psychological control.
This is where we go from the psychological target to the practical tools. The sources explicitly detail how two interlocking cameraic techniques fundamentally alter your perception of yourself and the person on screen.
So this is where media analysis meets cognitive science.
That's a great way to put it.
Let's start with the one that targets you, the viewer, directly. The claim that the cameras induce your mind to put down and feel small. How does a camera literally make a viewer feel psychologically diminished?
Well, it's largely achieved through the visual language of power. We are unconsciously programmed to read certain visual cues as, dominance or submission.
Okay.
If a camera uses a constant low-angle shot on a speaker, so looking up at them, that visually inflates their stature and authority. Conversely, if the editing is rapid, chaotic, or uses close-ups that feel aggressive, it prohibits you from establishing a stable, critical perspective.
I see. So the camera is creating an immediate, nonverbal hierarchical relationship where the person on screen is the dominant parent or authority, and the viewer is the receptive child.
Precisely. The source calls this mesmerizing camera and hypnotizing delineation fitted in camera that stupefies you. And stupefy doesn't just mean bore you, it means to blur your ability to concentrate or think clearly.
So like rapid, unnecessary camera movements or cuts that prevent you from holding eye contact or giving you time to process.
Yes, they are trying to overwhelm the adult state with visual noise.
That sounds almost designed to create cognitive overload, ensuring the brain defaults to the emotional, trusting response.
It is. And while you are being subtly diminished, the opposite is happening on screen. That brings us to the second complementary tool, the creation of false stature.
The source is very direct here. It says manipulations through cinematography provide false stature to heroes. What does false stature look like in practice, particularly in telecasting?
False stature is created by optimizing every visual element, lighting, set design, wardrobe, but mostly through framing and composition to suggest an inherent superiority that might not actually exist.
Can you give an example?
Sure. For instance, using a shallow depth of field to isolate the figure against a blurred background. That suggests they are the only thing that matters. Or using deep focus, which can create an almost monumental quality, making them appear integrated into and in control of a massive environment.
And according to the analysis, this isn't just like benign idol worship. This technique has a tangible political purpose.
Absolutely. The source states that this camera work causes the mind to provide an uncalled for supply of attention to politicians.
So you're giving authority, time, and emotional energy to a figure purely because the camera has visually engineered them to demand it.
Yes, not because their ideas merit that level of focus.
But doesn't good cinematography always enhance the subject? I mean, when is enhancement considered manipulative and when is it just quality production?
That's the critical distinction.
Right.
And that's what this source challenges us to consider. Quality production aims for clarity and emotional resonance. Manipulation, or what the source terms cameraic manipulations, is when the goal is to systematically mar or damage the mind's inner working by presenting persuasive visual arguments disguised as objective description.
So the depiction is explicitly stated to be not that objective when they are descriptive.
Exactly. The difference lies in the intent to control or persuade your critical faculty.
So, if the visuals are engineered to create deference and prevent critical processing, we have to ask the ultimate question. Why? Why are they going to all this psychological and visual trouble? What is the core motive?
The motive presented is explicitly political and aimed at control. This entire sophisticated programming system is intended to persuade you to make his opinions in favor of the intended political leader.
And the analysis even names who benefits. The leader who controls the telecast machine, or more broadly, his party men's studio.
Right.
This suggests that the infrastructure of media production is being commandeered to manufacture consent.
It's a closed loop of influence.
Yeah.
And the high-stakes shaping political opinion, they underscore why remaining the unarmed, unaware viewer is so risky. If the output is designed to be suggestive and politically persuasive, we need an equally powerful defense.
And thankfully, the source doesn't just leave us defenseless.
No, it doesn't.
It gives us a name for the necessary cognitive defense. We must train your perceptive musculature.
I think that is one of the most memorable takeaways from this source. It treats critical viewing not as a passive state, but as an active strength-building exercise, a form of cognitive fitness.
What practically does training this perceptive musculature entail? How do we build that strength against these suggestive telecasts?
It means consciously engaging your adult state the moment you encounter the media. The training involves actively identifying the manipulation techniques we've just been discussing.
Okay.
So when you see a politician presented from a heroic low angle with dramatic lighting, your perceptive musculature flexes by saying, aha, That is false stature being constructed.
So it's about decoding the visual language rather than just absorbing it.
Exactly. The source defines competency as achieving sophisticated aware perception. This awareness is the mechanism that can put down the obnoxious delineation.
Obnoxious delineation. I like that phrase.
It refers specifically to the intentionally misleading or confusing visual framing. Once you recognize the trick, the mesmerizing camera work, it loses its hypnotizing effect.
The knowledge itself is the armor.
Absolutely. Competency in viewing visuals serves to safeguard your reactions to loose or lose control over your own critical thoughts and opinions. You are consciously choosing to process the information through your critical adult state, protecting yourself from being hijacked by the highly suggestible child state that the programming is targeting.
That is a phenomenal conceptual framework. Let's bring this all back to the core idea. What we've dissected today is the compelling argument that telecasting isn't a neutral vessel for information.
Not at all.
It is, according to the source, a powerful, calculated tool targeting the subconscious, using specific visual cues, the mesmerizing camera, false stature, rapid cuts to induce mental dwarfing and steer political bias.
The primary takeaway here is that your attention is not passive. It's a resource being actively managed manipulated by production techniques. The knowledge that these tools exist is the required foundation for training that perceptive musculature.
Right.
You have to recognize that when you tune in, you are potentially stepping into an engineered environment designed to manage your emotional response and shape your opinion before you even process a single word.
So, what does this all mean for you, the viewer, the next time you turn on a screen? If our visual intake is constantly providing false stature to figures and trying to make us feel small, how often are we viewing crucial information with the eyes of the critical adult versus the trusting, unsuspecting child? The power lies in recognizing that knowledge about how the cinematography, the editing, the psychological targeting is power against information overload, especially when that information is intentionally deceptive.
And the provocative thought to carry with you is this. Consider the next time you watch a news report or an interview. Can you differentiate between what the person is saying and what the camera is trying to tell you about that person?
Are the visual cues reinforcing genuine authority, or are they an obnoxious delineation attempting to bypass your critical adult state? That shift in perspective is everything. We encourage you to continue exploring the idea of strengthening that perceptive musculature. Become the aware viewer.